Hello and welcome to a new video. Today I am bringing you my April wrap up and oh my god, I am so happy. I think I'm out of my reading slump and it is all thanks to romance books. So in the month of April I read a whopping 19 books. I took part in 3.5 readathons. So I took part in Magical Readathon hosted by G over at Book Roast, Realmathon hosted by Cassidy over at Covers with Cassidy, Magical Hopathon hosted by Rachel Kerris, and then the half is the one that's half in April, half in May, and that is Eurovisionathon hosted by Helen over at Helen's Bookhaven. I didn't end up doing an actual TBR for Eurovisionathon because I didn't think I would managed to actually read it because I was in a really not great place, but apparently I've managed to like smash out like 10 books from it. So on those 19 books I read 7,886 pages. That's an amazing page count. And audiobooks, I did do a lot of audiobooking this month. Like almost all of the books I read both physically while the audiobook was on or just audibly. I really took full advantage of Scribd and Audible this month because I genuinely was struggling and I was sad that I was struggling. So I switched it up and I ended up listening to 107.5 hours of audiobooks, which is just wow. So yeah, 14 of those were some sort of audiobook, whether it was audiobook on its own, audiobook with the physical or ebook in front of me. So there was a lot. But yeah, and I did sort of like branch out of my my genres, because whilst I did read a little bit of fantasy, I read one classic, I read mostly romance, and I branched out into a couple of paranormal books and some mythology as well. So branched out, but it was the romance that got me through, I'm gonna be honest. So star ratings, I had 2 2-stars, 0 3-stars, 8 4-stars and 9 5-stars. Over half of what I read was 5 stars this month and I'm so happy. So we're gonna dive in and I'm going to let you know what I read and how I got on. So first off, we had the leftover from my March TBR, and that was Shadow Kiss by Rochelle Mead. This was a 4-star. I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed Frostbite, but it didn't break my heart like Frostbite did. So that was something, but I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really good sequel, and I'm trying really hard to remember what happened in this one because I've read the next one after it. Oh yeah, a major thing happened which I saw come in, and I still don't know how to feel about it. So so yeah, I did really enjoy it. I just didn't enjoy it as much as the previous book in the series. Next up, we had Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter, which I was so incredibly excited for. And this was actually my deciding factor that I don't think I'm into high fantasy at the moment, because I did not enjoy this in the slightest. And to be honest, it's not just because of the the fact I'm not in the mood for high fantasy. It was the book. I mentioned this in my vlog, my 4 reasons, but basically I didn't like how the main character, like the attitude and the tone of the main character, I thought was, it made me so uncomfortable and so angry. So this was a 2-star. I was really sad about it. I buddy read it with Lisa, and she didn't dislike it as much as I did, but she didn't love it like she thought she would. So yeah, this was just a huge disappointment, and I am not going to be continuing this series because I don't care for the main character. He can just die for all I care. Next up, I read Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. This was also a 2-star, so we got the 2 stars out of the way early in the month. I don't think children's classics are for me. This one was not as bad as other children's classics I've read, but And I know, I understand why it's written the way it is, and I understand what happens is very true to life to the time that it's set in, but it just made me so uncomfortable, angry, and there was like a couple of things in particular that just were too well described for a kid's book. Like, there is animal abuse in this book, and some of the things were just like too well described, and I didn't care for it. And yeah, and it was just a too convenient ending, and I just really didn't enjoy it. So maybe I'm going to stay away from children's classics from now on. Next up, we have a book that I have been putting off for a year, and I hate myself for, and that's The Crown of Gilded Bones by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This was a 5-star. 5-star. I have been really scared to pick this up because literally everyone has hated this book. They've like either DNF'd it or they've like 2 or 3 starred it, and I was so worried. But I was like, I want to continue the series. Something happens. I found out, like, I looked up a spoiler for something that happens in the book after this, and I really wanted to get to that book, so I was like, I'm just going to push through. I'm going to do it. I'm doing this. And oh my god, I'm so glad I finally did, because this was incredible. I absolutely adored it. The characters have just, like, I was already in love with the characters, but I'm even more in love with the characters now, and it ripped my heart out, and I need the next book. And I really like the way the storyline's going. So I don't know what people are going on about. The banter between 2 of the characters is just top tier, and I love it. And yeah, I adore this book with everything. Next up is where I started to head towards more romance. I mean, I started with Crown of Gilded Bones, but then I was like, time for romance. I enjoyed that. And I read Fortuitous by KJ Sutton. Now, this was going to be part of my Lisa Made Me Do It vlog. I have decided to not do that vlog just yet. However, this was on her list and I really wanted to read it, so I just read it, and she's very happy right now because I 4-starred this. This was so good. I really enjoyed this book. I absolutely adore Fortuna, and Colith owns me. Like, that man is perfect. I'm really excited to see how this series progresses. I know from many people who have read it that it is going to break me, and I am so here for it because I'm a sucker for punishment here, like, apparently so. But I really loved this. I loved the characters, I loved the plot, I loved the writing, I loved the world, and I am just here for more of this. Next up, we have Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb. Oh, I've done it. I have successfully finished a Fitz trilogy and enjoyed all 3 books in it. Who am I? So this was a 4-star. I sort of thought that it might have been a 5-star, and then as the book was going on, I was just feeling like it wasn't gonna quite hit it, and it didn't. If we look at Core Pile, it does come out as a 4.5. I don't give half-star ratings, but if I did, it does come out as a 4.5. I did really enjoy this. There was very much an aspect of, like with the 3rd book in the first trilogy, there was very much an aspect of a lot of traveling to somewhere, but this time it was more interesting. Stuff was still happening, we were still learning stuff, and I was a lot more invested in the characters this time, or rather I was invested in the characters because I didn't care about them in the first trilogy. So I definitely think that helped. And there were a few things that were a little bit convenient, which sort of annoyed me. Usually I don't mind convenience, but it doesn't suit a Robin Hobb book to be convenient, and it put me off. Like, if it was any other author that I read, I would have been fine with it, but it just doesn't feel right in a Robin Hobb book for things to be too convenient. So I think that's why it got a 4-star instead of a 5. Next up, we have a book that I have been shouted at by Ro at Wandering Through Worlds to read, and so glad I did. Why is there a helicopter? Right, the helicopter's gone now. So I read It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, and this book owns me now. Brendan, that man, I can't even tell you how much I need a Brendan in my life. I loved this book. I wasn't really sure about Piper in the beginning, but she really grew on me. I loved her development as a character. I loved them as characters, and their storyline was just everything. This was, of course, a 5-star, and if you watch my haul in a few days' time, you're gonna see the sequel to this, because yeah. So I'd just like to say thank you to Chloe from Persistent Bookworm for gifting me this one, because the smut also. The smut. Can we talk about the smut for a sec? Because the smut was insanely good. Like, I want to reread and tab all of those bits just so that I can like visually see how amazing the smut is in this. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking about smut for now. The next book I read was, and I'm clearly not going to stop talking about smut. The next book I read was The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. This was also a 5-star, guys. Guys, everyone, right? So when I first saw people talking about this book, they were all like raving about it, and then I started seeing not so great reviews, and I was worried. I want to know what the hell people that didn't like this are on, because this was so good. The development of the characters and the way what happens was just so perfect. It didn't feel forced or rushed, even though the actual storyline takes place within the space of like a couple of weeks, but it didn't feel forced or rushed. Like, do you know how like clever you've got to be as a writer to be able to do that and do it well? Like, honestly, I bow down to this author. Like, I love, yes, love. But yeah, I also need an Aaron in my life as well as a Brendan. I just need them both, apparently. So yeah, this was the start of the romance, and you're gonna see more romance, trust me. Next up, we had Mythopedia, which is an encyclopedia of mythical beasts and their magical tales. And I think the author is Good Wives and Warriors, but I'm guessing it's a collection of people. This was gifted to me by Kendra for my birthday, and I am so glad I got to read a physical copy, because I did actually have an e-arc of this, but I would have had to try and read it on my iPad, and honestly, the illustrations in this would not have been done justice. Like, look at that. That is absolutely stunning. I really enjoyed reading about all of these. Like, I've not heard of most of these. The only ones I've really heard of is the European ones and like a couple of the African ones. All of the others I've not heard of before. So I absolutely loved learning about these. I will say I skipped 2 of the short stories because they were about spiders, like spider-like creatures, and I physically, with the illustrations on there, it was making me feel sick looking at the page, so I had to just skip them, which is unfortunate, but you know, it's fine. Luckily it was just short stories, but overall I loved this. I loved the illustrations. It was just beautiful, and this was a 5-star. Yes, and I loved it. Next up, we have a tiny novella, and that is Memento by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. So this is a prequel novella to the Illuminae files, which I absolutely adore, and I really enjoyed seeing this, and it was nice to dive back into the world from before the events of the trilogy, and it was just amazing. This did get a 4-star. I'm pretty sure the whole trilogy got a 5-star, but it's rare a novella for me gets a 5-star, because the plot, even though there's a plot, there's not like an entire plot, if that makes sense. So it is a bit hard to like rate it on core pile for certain things because it's literally 57 pages. But I really enjoyed it, and I'm so glad I finally read it. Next up, I read A Cat Story by Ursula Murray Husted. This is a really short graphic novel. It's set in Malta and follows these 2 cats on a journey, and honestly, the cutest little thing ever. I adored this. It was, the artwork in it is just stunning, and the story is just gonna warm your soul so much. I loved this. This was a 4-star, and honestly I would recommend picking this up because it's just adorable. Next up, I read Cersei by Madeline Miller. I finally read it. Like, this has been on like 3 TBRs in the past year and a half, and I finally read it, and oh my god, I'm so glad I did. This is a 4-star. I really enjoyed this, and I will say, if you have the chance to listen to the audiobook, do it, because it is a really good narration of this story. This is one of the books that I was listening to whilst having the book physically in front of me, and I'm really glad I read it like that because it was a really good experience. But I really liked getting to see Cersei, because I said this in my vlog, so I apologize if you watched my vlog on this, but I said it in the vlog where I read it, that the only thing I really knew about Cersei was what I know from the Percy Jackson books. So it was really nice to actually get to see Cersei, because this is literally her life. Like, not her whole life, obviously, she is a god, but it was just really amazing to see like everything and how she became who she was and why she did certain things. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this. Okay, so I just realised at the beginning of this video I forgot to mention I did DNF one book this month. I was doing so well. It was like the 22nd of the month, and I was like, oh my god, I haven't DNF'd a book. And then I started trying to read White Hot Kiss by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I got 110 pages into this and couldn't do it anymore. Right, okay, let me just start with, this was written in 2003, which explains a lot with the bad writing, like, but it made me really uncomfortable the way the main character and her best friend spoke about other people and other people's looks, especially. It made me feel a little bit sick, and I'm just like, I knew people like that when I was in school, and I hated those people. They were the bullies in the school, and it just sort of like brought those memories back, and I couldn't do it. And then even if you forget about that and go on to the storyline, so this is demons and gargoyles, but what I did not know is that there's apparently zombies in this world too, and I just wasn't, like, don't get me wrong, I don't hate a zombie book.6however, it needs to make sense why there's zombies there. And this just didn't explain why there was just one random zombie in this scene. And I just didn't. I couldn't. So I DNF'd it. Luckily, I only paid 99p for this on Kindle. Because if I'd paid full price for this, I would have been so annoyed at wasting my money. So I think it's safe to say that I will be sticking to Jennifer L. Armentrout's newer stuff and not delving into her too far back into her backlist. Next up, we had The Reckless Afterlife of Harriet Stoker by Lauren James. Oh my god, this was so good. So this is basically about a girl that dies, and then she becomes a ghost, and she's in this building where she died with all these other ghosts of people that have died on this land. And there is so much drama in this. And it's just so good. And I've been wanting a good ghost story book for a while, and honestly, this just delivered. This is the first Lauren James book I've read that isn't sci-fi, so I was a bit like wary going into it because I didn't know if Lauren James would be able to write something that wasn't sci-fi, but I can tell you this now, this delivered. Like, this was so good, and this was a 5-star. I know. It was just like, there was a little bit of a twist at one point, and I think it was really well done because I didn't see it coming, and I was just like so here for it. And I'm just like, it's so well written, and I love the story and I love the characters, and it was just so good. Next, we go back to a little bit more romance, and I read The Northern Lights Lodge by Julie Kaplan. Yeah, I'm really into Julie Kaplan's books now, apparently. You're going to see a couple more. I really enjoyed this. This was a 4-star. This isn't quite my least favourite of her books that I've read so far, but I really enjoyed it. The descriptions of Iceland were absolutely beautiful, and it has made me so badly want to just go to a cozy little cabin or lodge in Iceland and just enjoy the peace and quiet and go see the Northern Lights. Like, it is on my bucket list to see the Northern Lights in my lifetime. And the descriptions of it was just absolutely beautiful. So I really enjoyed this. I really liked the two characters. However, this one I felt like all it needed was a bit of communication and it would have been better, but it's fine. It wasn't too bad with the miscommunication, so I'll let Julie Kaplan off for this one. Next up, we had another one I was really intimidated by, and that is A Shadow in the Ember by Jennifer L. Armentrout. So this is the first book in the Flesh and Fire series, which is a prequel series to the Blood and Ash series. It is set many years before, I think. It has completely different characters, and I was really intimidated by this one because it has different characters, and I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy this world with different main characters, but I can tell you this now, I did. I will say, as much as I love Ash in this, he does not beat Castile in the Blood and Ash series. Doesn't beat him, but he's up there. He's up there. He's amazing. And I didn't, as much as I loved Sarah, I didn't love her as much as Poppy. Poppy just holds a special place in my heart. And I just absolutely love her. But I did really enjoy this, and oh my god, I cannot wait for the sequel. And the cover for the sequel has just been announced, and oh my god, it is beautiful. Beautiful. So yeah, this got a 5-star. Jennifer Armentrout can just write this series and anything in this series, and apparently I'm going to give it 5 stars because I love it all. Next up, I read City of Fallen Angels by Cassandra Clare. This is the 4th book in the Mortal Instruments series, and I love this one. This one is a little bit shorter than the previous one because it's sort of like the first in a trilogy, because the Mortal Instruments was originally supposed to be 2 trilogies, but then they made it one big series of 6 books. I don't know why, but this works really good as a first book in a trilogy, and I think a lot of people need to remember that going into it, that it is technically a first book in a trilogy, because the end of the 3rd book, almost everything sort of gets wrapped up, and it's like one little thing that needs to be resolved, and it's like, okay. So that is fine. But the main story has been like resolved from the first 3 books, and then we dive in. They're getting back to normal and everything, and then bam, something happens, and I love it. I will say Simon really gets on my nerves in this one, which makes me sad because he is one of my favourite characters. But do you know what? Gotta remember, he's a teenage boy who's had a lot of stuff go on in his life, and you got to cut him a bit of slack. Although one thing I won't cut him slack on, but it's fine. I do forgive him because of reasons. Can't say anything else without spoiling, but this of course was a 5-star. Like, are we shocked? No, we're not. I love this, and I love that Izzy's on the cover of this one because I love Izzy so much. But yeah, so I'm so excited to talk about this in the live show next week. Next, we had The Little Cafe in Copenhagen by Julie Kaplan, and this is the first book of Julie Kaplan so far that's got a 5-star. Oh my god, this is my favourite. I love it so much. This one felt the most like realistic. Like, these are contemporary romance, but you know, sometimes contemporary romance, you just sort of like, yeah, that wouldn't happen though. This is something that I could actually imagine happening to like a normal person in the real world. It didn't seem too far-fetched, and I think that was a big factor in why I enjoyed this so much. I also love that how in the first like few chapters there is a mention of Star Wars and mentions of Doctor Who, because the main character is saying about how her brother is like a massive nerd, and then later on the characters are having a conversation about Doctor Who, and I'm just like, oh my god, these are my people. I love this. But it's made me really want to go to Denmark. Especially there's a bit where the group that go to Copenhagen together, they go to a theme park in Copenhagen. And I'm just like, I've actually been looking up the theme park because I want to go there. So you never know, maybe I'll go there at some point because it sounds amazing. But yeah, this got a 5-star. I loved the couple in this. The resolution to their conflict that happens, I think, was really well done as well. And I love these characters with everything. Next up, we have Blood Promise by Rochelle Mead. This is the 4th book in the Vampire Academy series. I told you you'd see more of this series. So, this was a 5-star. I loved this one. So much happens in this, and it just sort of blew my mind a little bit. And I really enjoyed the character development of Rose. I wasn't the biggest fan of Rose. She really annoyed me in the first book. But throughout the books, she has really grown on me, because you see how, obviously, like, she's growing up because of things that are happening to her. And I feel like it hurts to see all this bad stuff happening to her. But at the same time, to see her growth and the fact that she is growing up, because she was such a child in the first book and I just wanted to punch her. But I still don't like Lissa. And in fact, this book has completely put me off Lissa for good now. Which again, I'm really excited to talk about in Liv's live show for this, because I have feelings and I'm going to share them. But yeah, 5 stars. And I said in my vlog where I finished this that it was the first book of the series to get 5 stars. It's not. Frostbite got 5 stars. Like, there was no way that book wasn't going to create that reaction to me and not get 5 stars. So it's actually the second book. So far it's gone 4, 5, 4, 5. We'll see how the 5th and 6th books go. And then the final book that I read in April was The Little Swiss Ski Chalet by Julie Kaplan. That is a mouthful to try and say in one go. Try it, because that's hilarious. This one got a 4-star. I think this might be my least favourite of the 4 I've read by her so far. And I'm going to be honest, the main reason, I did talk spoilers in my vlog, so I won't say spoilers here, but the main reason is something happens which is a massive trigger for me, and I literally had a breakdown while listening to it, which was not great, because I wasn't expecting. It's not the sort of thing that would be mentioned in a triggers list either. So even if there was triggers for this book, which there isn't, because it's just a cute little romance, like, there's nothing trigger worthy, but this is like a personal thing, and it just caught me off guard. And yeah, it brought my mood down. And on top of that, it is lacking something which other Julie Kaplan books has, and it was just a bit of a disappointment in that front as well, which again, I don't want to spoil, so I'm not going to like go into details on what, but it's still got a 4-star. I still enjoyed it, but I would not reread this one because of the trigger in it for me. But that, again, is a very personal thing, and I don't want anyone to not pick this up because of that. It's something that happened within my family, and it just... If you watch the vlog and want to know the spoiler, go for it. It's not like a major spoiler to the plot or anything. It's a very little thing, but yeah, it created this like massive meltdown, and I just don't want to read it again. But I did enjoy the actual plot. I liked the characters. They weren't my favourite characters, and I think the male love interest was just my least favourite of Julie Kaplan's male love interests so far. But they can't all be perfect. So yeah. So they were all of the books I read in April. So for readathons, so like I said, I took part in like 3.5. I read 10 books for Eurovisionathon. I read 8 books for Magical Hopathon, 6 books for Magical Readathon, and all 19 books that I read in the month, I logged for Realmathon, which was the perfect thing about Realmathon. So my favourite book of the month, I thought it was going to be It Happened One Summer, but it wasn't. It was The Crown of Gilded Bones. This was my favourite book. I read in April. And considering the reason I was putting this book off was because everyone hated it, I'm so happy I loved it enough that it's my favourite book of the month. It's just amazing. So yeah, it's my favourite book. I love it so much. So let me know in the comments below what the best book you read in April was, and if you took part in any of the same readathons as me. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye.